Hi everybody, it's Bronwyn here. It's been a while since I've done a video. Yeah, it's been a few weeks, but you guys know how it is, right? Life just kind of happens. It's been very busy here in my life, so today is my first sort of calm day in quite a while. So I am going to do a VR to Shuffle Tarot. Nina at Shuffle Tarot, she did a video on her top 10 reader decks for 2020. And I thought that was a really cool idea because it's interesting to see what decks people really get into and use. Like, I know personally I'll plan to use a certain deck and maybe it just doesn't work out. Or a deck I think I'm really gonna love, I just don't really click with, if that makes any sense. So these are the 10 decks of 2021 that I used a ton. Some of them really surprised me. Some of them not so much, but I'm just going to do like a brief look at each deck. So the first one, these are in no particular order. I just pulled them off the shelf and I'm just going to go through them. So the first one that I used a ton this year was the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot. I actually have 2 copies of it. This is the tuck box version that is currently for sale. It's the 2nd edition. It's on this nice matte cardstock. I bought it more as a backup copy. I honestly haven't used this one very much at all. But this is my 1st edition that I got off Kijiji. And I have used this one so much. Some of the images are different than in the 2nd edition. It's quite worn. And I don't know, there's something about the artwork, the hand-drawn titles on the cards, the variety in the artwork too. Like, some of it is, I don't know how to quite put it into words, but like this King of Wands, for instance, is quite different or more complicated art style than this 2 of Cups or this 9 of Swords. There's a lot of variation in color. I think that might be a key theme that I'm detecting. I like decks that have a wide variety of colors in them that aren't as, some people call them samey. So yeah, this is one of my most used decks of this year. All right, next. This one surprised me. The True Heart Intuitive Tarot by Rachel True. It comes with this great guidebook. It's really interesting. It's got a lot of information about her sort of personal story. It's kind of like an autobiography set to a tarot guide, which is really unique. And I keep the cards in that little pouch that I knit. You'll see that a lot. Special decks get a special bag, especially if they don't come with a container or case that I find is handy to keep, like, or throw in a bag. So this deck surprised me. I bought it sort of on a whim. A lot of the ones that surprised me, obviously I did buy on a whim because otherwise I wouldn't have purchased them. But this deck, it's got a bad reputation as far as its cardstock goes, but I don't mind the cardstock. It's very, very papery. Like, at first I was actually kind of like, ew, I've never felt that reaction to cardstock before where I actually disliked it right out of the box. It has gotten better with use, and I have used this deck a ton. It sends me very clear messages. Yeah, it just works for me. It's one of those decks. So these are the backs, and I've edged it. Most of the decks I've edged are done with Tombos, which are a watercolor marker. And the most commonly used one that I use is the 026, which is kind of like a matte gold. I find it looks good with most decks. So yes, highly recommend this deck. The guidebook is excellent. And if you're a beginner, I think that it's awesome. As long as you're not too picky about cardstock, because it is papery. It's published by, I think it's Houghton Mifflin. If I recall, yes, Houghton Mifflin. I know they do textbooks. A lot of my textbooks in elementary school and high school were published by Houghton Mifflin. All right, next up, the Darkwood Tarot. So this comes in a big Llewellyn box. I've done flip throughs of most of these decks on my channel if you want to check them out. I love the guidebook that comes with the Darkwood. It's an interesting read. Sometimes I'll pull it out and just read it just because. It's got a fairy tale sort of narrative to it that I absolutely love. I love decks that have a narrative story. So this is the bag for the Darkwood. It's great if you're in a more of a shadow work sort of mode. I edged mine in red. I ripped that idea off from Mixtress Ray and I love it. So yeah, it's great for shadow work. The guidebook helps you along, and even though there isn't a huge amount of color variety in this deck, it works for me. Again, not one I was really necessarily expecting to love. But yeah, I love the pops of red in some of the cards, and the fire colors really stand out. Like, look at that moon card. It's just beautiful. So yeah, I've done a lot of work with this deck this year. It'll be interesting to see what I end up working with next year and to compare them in a video next year. So Nina, thank you. This is a really good idea. I love your videos. And this is my first actual VR. Everything else I've done is just flip throughs. So this is kind of fun. Okay, the next one I've got is the Albano-Waite Tarot. Just comes in this tuck box with just a little insert. This is a reprint of a deck that was originally published in the 60s, I think 1968. It's US Games. It's got that sort of plasticky US Games cardstock. It's got a really fun sort of retro 60s take on the colors in the original Rider-Waite-Smith. I find this deck just appeals to me visually, and it reads really well. This deck is not going to pull any punches, at least my copy. It's, I love the way it feels. Look at that king, like, look at those colors. Yeah, I love the way it shuffles. It's a whole sensory experience, this deck. I think it's quite underrated, and it wasn't very expensive. I think it was Canadian. I got it off Amazon. I think it was $25. So not bad at all. If I can get it back in the box. There we go. All right, let's see what's next. The Star Spinner. So this is by Trungles. Comes in this beautiful box here with the ribbon. This is another deck that has a real fairy tale feel to it. It's published by Chronicle Books. So the cardstock, I don't really have anything else I can compare it to. It's matte with like maybe a semi-gloss. Again, I love the artwork. I love the colors. Like, look at this Empress. Isn't she beautiful? With her giant sheaf of wheat. So again, very visually appealing. It's diverse, which I love. It comes with extra cards for the lovers. There are, in total, I think there are 4 cards you can pick from. I've got them in the bottom here under the guidebook. And the guidebook's really nice too. I always read the guidebooks because I just find it interesting, people's different takes. So here's one of the extras. There's another one. Just absolutely beautiful. And definitely deserves a spot in my top 10 readers because it's another one that I just reach for. you know, sometimes you order indie decks and you think, this is the one I'm going to use all the time, but never seems to work out that way. This one really surprised me, and honestly, I think I've probably used this one second most this year. I've used it so much. The Gregory Scott Tarot. I bought it thinking I didn't really like the artwork from what I saw online, and it's still not my favorite. I love Gregory Scott though. I watch him on YouTube all the time. I just think he's a wonderful person. And I thought I'll buy his deck because I think he's amazing. The guidebook is very brief because it's a low scarabeo and it's, you know, in multiple languages. So the actual info you get in English is quite small, and the meanings deviate significantly from the Rider-Waite-Smith. And they've been translated from Italian, so they don't really always make immediate sense. You kind of have to think about it. But again, I was shocked. It just works for me. Like, for instance, the Four of Swords, which I always think of as like a rest suit. In this deck, it's Threat and Menace. If you want to see that. But I just read it intuitively more, like, or based on my idea of what the Four of Swords means. Oh, here it is. It's right on the top. See, that doesn't look like rest and relaxation to me, but maybe it's supposed to be a break from this. You know, you just sort of work with it. Again, big variation in colors, and this deck has been through a lot. I edged it in black, and then it's sort of like, when I shuffled it, it smeared all over the cards, so I had to go through and clean them all off. Then once it dried, it all chipped off because I shuffled this deck a lot. This is my like sit, watch TV, and shuffle deck. Don't know if anybody else has one of those. I definitely shuffle sort of as like an anxious thing. I like to knit too, obviously, hence all the pouches. But yeah, so I shuffled this deck a ton, and all of the edging started to chip. So I thought, I will try something different. I'm going to use a gold Sharpie. Well, that was a disaster because it never really dried, and the cardstock, being low scarabeo, it's thin enough, I guess, that it kind of like didn't dry properly, and I couldn't spread the cards anymore. Even once it dried, they were sort of stuck together. So I ended up having to go through each card and just trim the slightest bit off of each edge. So now the deck isn't perfectly cut, as you can see. It's like not quite even, but it just gives, and then I re-edged it in gold, of course. So yeah, this deck's been through a lot. I keep it with me most of the time. Again, like, I'm not really a fan of this artwork. I don't know what it is about this deck that I love so much, but there you go. It's a mystery. What can I say? So yeah, Gregory Scott Tarot. Totally shocked me that this ended up being one of my most used decks of the year. All right, then we have the Star Tarot. This is the second edition by Cathy McClelland. It has an excellent guidebook. It really gets into the imagery. It's a deep dive into the deck. So this is a bigger deck. It's got pretty big cards. Comes with gold gilding. As you can see from the ends, I have shuffled this a lot. It's beautiful. It's a classic deck, you know. It's got nice matte cardstock, even though the edges have gotten really dinged up. I love it. It's colorful. There's a lot of animals in it. It mixes in a bit of Thoth as well. Thoth symbology. And yeah, since it's so big, I have trouble shuffling it this way. So I shuffle it lengthwise, and that's why the ends have gotten pretty worn. And then I think what I did was I like re-edged it in dark blue on the spots that were worn, so it would look less damaged. It sort of worked. But these things all add character to our decks, right? At least that's how I feel. It's like the more time I spend handling a deck, the more close I feel to it. Does that sound insane? I don't know. Okay, so that is the Star Tarot. So that's number 7. I've got 3 left. Okay, the Morgan-Greer. I probably ended up using the tin version the most just because it's around more and it's really handy. This is another US Games, just comes with a little insert. I love the artwork in this. This was originally published in 1979, I believe. And I am a late 70s baby, so I love the colors. I love the faces. I love the cardstock. It's just your typical US Games cardstock. Oh, I love the backs too. It's fun to shuffle. And yeah, it's a great reader. It sends me very clear messages. I like the way it's very based on traditional Rider-Waite Smith, but they're closer up images. It's like it's more personal as far as their facial expressions go. Like, come on, look at him. Look at his feather. So that is the Morgan-Greer. And this is the full-size version, which I haven't used quite as much as the pocket. Obviously, the cards are bigger. The colors are a little bit different. I might do a flip through where I compare it, especially on, if I can find it, the Judgment card is quite starkly different between the 2 decks. But that's for another video. I love this 9. The purples, it's just gorgeous. Look at this moon card. This is that more plasticky cardstock too, like with the Albano-Waite, which I really like. I love the way it shuffles. It riffles like a dream. I'm gonna riffle it right now just because I have it out. Look at that mix. So satisfying. All right, so now we have 2 left. The Gummy Bear Tarot. I cannot count the number of times I have done readings for my kids with this deck, especially my daughter. She's 16 and she's really not a fan of tarot, but she likes this deck. She loves the artwork. It is very simple. It is absolutely adorable. I mean, come on, look at those guys. This deck has gotten so much use. I can't even begin to explain it to you. I haven't used it to read for myself, but anytime my daughter wants a reading, she'll say, "Gummy bears, please." I don't even have to ask anymore. And she also enjoys, after we do the reading, to get out like a classic Rider-Waite Smith and compare. So I'm working on her. I think maybe eventually she'll become a fan of tarot, but I'm trying to be very subtle in my ways. So yes, the Gummy Bear Tarot. This is by Dietmar Bittrich. Look at the 10. Look at these little guys all around the sides. I got this off Amazon. It was only, I think, $20. So finally, this is my favorite deck of the year. I said no particular order, but this is my favorite deck of the year. The Northern Animal Tarot. This is an independently published deck. Comes out of Alberta, if you live in Canada. See there? This was originally over the top. It's this beautiful box. It reminds me of like an old-fashioned storybook cover. And that face on that, I guess that's a fox. It's just his eyes. He's so sweet. I keep the deck in this bag. Oh, also, I'll show you the inside of the box. Look at that. So she still has these up for sale on her website, but she's currently doing a Kickstarter for a 2nd edition with different cardstock. I guess it's thicker, stiffer, matte, and I have backed that. That is the only Kickstarter I have ever backed, believe it or not. And the only one I ever plan on backing. Okay, so this deck, these are the tarot cards. This is you get a ton of extra cards when you buy this deck, like oracle cards and 3 spread cards, which is cool. And then an extra Hierophant and an extra, there's another extra card in here. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's just it's just the Hierophant. So I have a special bag I made for these. It's got like a little divider. So I keep the little guidebook and the oracle cards on one side of the divider. And then I keep the tarot deck on the other. This was made out of scraps of leftover yarn that I was going to throw out. And then I ended up making a bag. So this deck is so special. It is everything. I absolutely love her artwork. It is completely based off the RWS. If you're a beginner and you're just looking to learn, this would be an excellent deck. You would need a book though, a separate book, because the guidebook is really just like keywords. It's just a little leaflet. It's totally got a storybook feel. It reminds me of books I read when I was a kid. Like, look at this 6 of Pentacles. Look at these little mice. This is the only deck I have a backup copy of in my entire collection. And then I will be, of course, getting the 2nd edition. The cardstock on this is totally unique. It was printed locally in Alberta. I think she lives near Edmonton. And so it wasn't, shipped or printed in China. It was printed near her home, where she actually just goes and picks the decks up, which is so cool when they're done printing and ships them out. It's like archival paper, I think. So it's very unusual. It's thin, but it's high quality. It's got like a linen finish and a little bit of a gloss. Oh, and these are the backs. Aren't they adorable? It's very interesting to hold. It smells really good to me. I edged mine, by the way. It's worn, but I did edge it. And some of the cards, I think some of the ink smeared a little bit, but I have a backup copy, so I'm not too worried about it. Because this deck is like, if there's such a thing as a soul deck, this is mine. And there I kind of wrecked that one, but just their faces, they're so loving. This deck is honest, but not harsh. It is, to me, a 1 in a million. Look at this 10. I enjoy just flipping through it. The star. And I'm really excited about the 2nd edition. But this, I can't say enough about this deck. I'm gonna give it a little shuffle. I love how it shuffles. It's held up really well, actually, considering how much I've used it and how many complaints I heard on reviews online of this deck as far as its cardstock goes. But no, I love it. I love it. I love it. So thanks for watching. Those are my 10 reader decks for 2021. And I hope you have a fantastic day. I'm hoping to be back to making videos more consistently now that things have hopefully settled down for me. And yeah, take care, everybody. I'd love more people to do VRs to Nina's idea as well, because I think it's just so fun to see what people actually use, not just, what's the newest, coolest thing they've gotten, but actually what they use and what they connect with. So yeah, again, goodbye. Take care. Have an awesome day.